is at hand. Good.
They are good, yeah. They have them all the time in this square
Yeah.
for that, for
Valentine's
that's the
Day,
holiday they have.
Yeah.
And for, Christmas, they have the really cute snowman,
Oh, yeah.
but it's the same chocolate and the same caramel.
Yeah.
And it's dark chocolate, so it's good for you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Caramel, not so much, but. All right, let's get the. How do you make that full screen? I don't know how to make it, how to get rid of the stuff on the right. How do you do that? At the top?
Sure.
Not connected, not? Thought it was. The cord's not working. Yeah.
I go up to the. Where it's supposed to be.
Well, I don't need it anyway, because we got that one. Oh. All right. All right. Wait a minute. Make it- Speaking, there we go. Okay. All right, ready? So welcome to all those in our Zoom audience. This is the rescheduled second town board meeting of the month of February, 2023. Pleased to have everybody here with us. Call the meeting to order. And there is an addition, is there not, to the agenda? You had something you wanted to add.
Not really a benefit.
Sure.
But the, I just did a little bit more investigation on the IT stuff,
Okay.
the insurance, the cyber insurance. Cyber insurance.
Well, cyber insurance update.
The first info,
Mhm.
hardly even an update, but what do we call it that?
And anything else? Okay, good. Privilege of the floor. Is anyone who'd like to address the board on any subject? And wonder of wonders, I'm not seeing any hands. So we'll move right on. Dan is not here, right?
No correspondence or announcements, I guess.
I don't think there are. Is there any correspondence, Janice?
No, not that I'm aware of.
And I'm not aware of any announcements either.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I could
Has his
mention
hand
that
raised.
oh, I didn't see it. Gary, would you like to address the board? Can you still
There you go.
unmute?
What I'd like to say is, I'd like to make a suggestion. Since we're all adults here, I'd like to suggest that the meetings be unmuted. If someone fails to follow the rules by not raising their hand or waiting to be called upon, then that one individual can be muted. Also, I think the control of the muting should be at the discretion of the town supervisor or one of the board members. That's just my suggestion and opinion.
Mhm. If
I
I
mean,
could
we're
stay
not kids
connected,
anymore.
I could have better control.
I mean, we're not kids here.
Yeah. I was connected, but it disconnected again.
Ted now wants to do.
Yeah. Ted, you want to comment?
I would just like to second what Gary said. We are all adults here. If someone wants to throw in 2 words that are not disruptive and helpful, I think that that's very valuable for the meeting. And yeah, in short, I don't think you're going to have a problem.
Well, I hope not. Lost connection. No, I thought it was connected by cable. Oh, well.
Dan,
Uh,
Dan's not here.
Dan's not here, and neither is Keith. But Peter McDonald is here to be, so he could get to meet you all. Welcome, Peter. Peter McDonald in the upper right there.
Okay.
Joel, am I here to be answering questions or? Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm here to be voted on to the West Danby Water Committee. So I'm in your hands. Ask a question. Here I am. If this is the time, or you tell me.
Can you tell us why you're interested in serving?
Well, variety of reasons. To get Joel off my back. And I can see Joel's house out of the window behind me, so you know I can't hide from him. I like the people on the board. I know them. I arrived back in the Ithaca area from California about 1.5 years ago. And I was on statewide water boards there. Whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting in California. Don't think that's the problem here. There's a need, it's convenient. I got a head on my shoulders, and I think I can contribute certainly through the end of Carl's stepping down and me replacing him till I guess I get voted back on or I make a decision otherwise, but certainly happy to serve.
Thank you.
Any questions? I mean, I asked Peter comes to get to meet him and get a feel for him before we appoint him. Getting to know you. Yeah, you should-
You've attended meetings of the Water Commission.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Have you attended meetings? of
Yes,
the Water
I
Board?
have.
Oh, okay. Good.
You know, it's a 1-minute drive to the fire station. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
convenient committee to be on.
yeah, great. Well, thank you for your interest. Okay.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you, Peter.
All right, so I'm gonna leave and you're gonna vote?
Right, well, by and by. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna leave, absent any more questions, and Joel, let me know, you know, whether the election goes my way. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
I want to understand, I'm having trouble finding this here.
So Warren,
Yes. Catherine says she'll be right back.
Laura, were those 2 account numbers corrected? Okay, good.
That'd be-
And
Which one?
number, I had 70, 74, and 76 had different account numbers on the voucher. Oh,
66.
yeah,
66 was
76.
well, 66.
Right.
78, 74, we're saying 76.
I think up is on, but
Is it on now?
I
Okay.
had three that I noticed that were different, and that's the one that.
Yes, I looked at those, and then there was one that I sent to Janice kind of at the last minute that needed to change an account number. And she texted me back that she changed those. She changed that one, right then when I let her know. So I went back and forth and checked the ones that you had in question, Pat,
Okay,
and I did see that they were changed. They were changed on the abstract and changed on the vouchers.
and which is the correct number? Do you know that right off?
Oh shoot, I don't have, which one? For which one?
66 on them. 66 was on them.
That was the scary one. This one.
That photovoltaic one, that one should have been 1620 point, no, that's highway gas and energy, 5132.4.
So this one's correct.
Yes,
Okay, the other one was 74, same two numbers.
5132.4
This one.
for Century Alarm,
And the other one was Sunvestment.
5132.4.
Okay,
And that's true with.
so the abstract is correct and the voucher is incorrect, and that'll be changed.
Yes,
Okay. Good, thank you.
which one is 66?
It's J.C. Smith. It's just, I think it's a typo. It's got, it says A5312. I think it's supposed to be A5132.
5132,
So that, it's get changed on the abstract.
yes. That'll get changed on the, well, then on the abstract. She has, yeah. What was the number of that one for J.C. Smith again? Let me just
66.
write it down and we'll make sure. I'm sorry, Janice here. Janice is here too, so here I'm up here
yeah, I can.
talking about
And
it.
did you find the, Gary Huddle's?
No, I didn't come in here and talk to Cynthia.
Okay,
Janice, there was, in one of the magistrates, something here that was put on, what was that voucher number?
It
voucher
was,
number 69. It's for magistrates, it's for both Gary and for Teresa. And the vouchers, I didn't see the follow-up. I saw the actual bill for Teresa, but not the bill for Gary when I looked.
right, Teresa was accidentally put in twice, so I took out the duplicate of Teresa and I put Gary in instead.
Must
Okay.
be up there now and I didn't see
Okay.
it. Thanks, Janice.
Did the dental bill get added on them?
Is the dental bill put on for the general fund? I don't think so. I think I'm
Yes,
gonna
it
wait. Did
It
you
is.
did put that one on? Beautiful.
It's voucher 80.
Voucher 80, that was the last one. I did, matter of fact, I did see that. Thank you.
Okay, what is 80? I didn't go back.
Is the CSCA dental?
Is that the one I talked to you about,
Yes.
798?
Yes.
Okay.
98,
Okay.
75. So that's added to the total. So what's the total? What's the total for?
I believe that the total amount was right, that Janice had 16,538.79.
That's a link.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
And I wanted to mention one more thing before you guys approve, especially on the highway. Okay, you remember how we had set up something and we budgeted some things for unexpected highway repairs or unexpected truck repairs? And we had we called it like a reserve. We didn't actually set up a reserve fund, but we call it a reserve.
Yeah.
Okay, there was something on there and we had all made the agreement that before we spent anything out of there, we want to talk about it at the board
Mhm.
first. What had happened, and you're gonna see a couple of bills on there from Viking. Okay, and they're for some add-ons for our new trucks. What happened is that, when the trucks were in there being built, because your chassis come in, then they go into the garage and they all go to get built. there were some things, a couple of things, and I can't remember exactly what it was for. But something to do with the wings
Yeah.
and the hydraulics,
Float-
floats
floats,
or
the
whatever.
wings, the
It
wings.
needed to be added onto it, and these were something because you order them and then 8 months down the road you get them. And so right then, that's why the highway said, go ahead, because we didn't want to miss our opportunity in the garage when they have them in there to build them.
Yeah.
So we were thinking what we wanted to do, we didn't take anything out of there last year. And we have another 10,000 put in this year as well into that unexpected truck repair. We thought we'd take it out of there.
Okay.
But I wanted to mention that, so we talked about it before you approved it. Okay. It was a mistake on their part as well as a mistake on our part of not noticing it that change was going to be made when the time came when we got those trucks, but it's a necessary thing. It's something you have to have. So they proceeded with it. I just wanted to mention that. Okay.
Thank you.
And in highway number 40, the Jersey Hill road culvert. For
The rod, I know. Sorry for my
yeah,
typo.
that's okay. For $98,000. I mean, there was nothing, there was no,
No,
No, you'll
bill.
see oh, yes, there was. I had sent that on to Cynthia, and I don't know if she had, I can bring it in here to you. Maybe, quite possibly it didn't get on. It was,
It has-
is it on there now?
It's on.
Oh, it's on there. Yep.
Okay.
So there is a voucher and a bill for it.
Yeah.
Yes. For that. And you'll notice the account number. That account number is a CHIPS number. This was a number we use for CHIPS because we'll be turning that into CHIPS
Right.
to get reimbursed from that. Okay?
Laura,
Yes.
Cindy mentioned the SF fund for the fire district, and I don't have that on this agenda. We need to add that for approval?
Yes, that's a good point. You'll see that there's you may or may not have caught it when you were looking at Zoho, but we paid the fire department.
we paid
In
what?
essence, the fire district, their contracted amount for 578,000. Technically, I've already approved it. You went through the budget. It's,
Right.
it's part of the thing they were asking for the money. So what I did is I just put it up on an abstract. Do we have backup for it, so to speak? I'll take and I'll put a little backup on a voucher.
Yeah,
So keep it in our files, just probably a budget summary with that highlighted. The
is that
five,
general?
it all comes out of the same bank account, so
Yeah.
there is a separate abstract for it called the SF fund. Fire Protection Fund.
How much was it for?
I think it was 578,000.
Yes, it's whatever
Yes, so you could put that.
whatever-
here on the
Okay, so we
consent.
paid that?
Yes, it's all, it
Yeah.
has been paid.
that's a matter of just giving them what we raise in taxes,
Right,
Yeah.
under the warrant.
so it's not added on to this?
No.
No,
No, but there should be,
Just
what
an
what
FYI.
Janice was saying, yeah, kind of an FYI,
Okay.
and Janice will put it in here under warrants. In the minutes,
Okay.
but there's a separate SF warrant, and you guys should probably go ahead and, as you're going down, and just have it on your consent agenda. To know that, and just be mindful that when you approve the consent agenda, she really has that on it too.
well, there is no consent agenda, so.
No,
Oh, no, it's just warrants,
That's
okay.
right.
Okay,
right, well, I'll move the general fund abstract 58 through 80. For $16,538.79.
Second,
How much was it? 61?
16,538.79.
Any discussion about that? If not, Janice, the vote?
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
yes.
Weisberg is absent, Woodworth,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
now I'll move the highway fund voucher 23 through 40 for $358,303.32.
Second,
Any questions or discussion about that? Good. The vote?
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
Yes,
Woodworth,
Yes,
Gagnon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, do we want to do an SF warrant?
oh. Probably should.
Get it into the record, yeah.
Do you want me to read what I have? Let's see, let me pull it up. Sorry, I lost it.
Laura, what was the total for the fire district?
It was $578,000.
Then we have to put a different voucher number on it. Sorry, because this one came up when I paid it, voucher 58. So we'll change it to voucher 81.
Okay,
Because we label it that way because it comes out of the same bank account. So we
okay.
share the bank account.
So I'll move voucher 81 for
It
the
actually
fire
shows
department.
It shows as 58 on the abstract.
Yes, we have a 58 on the, for air gas on the general.
yeah, right, we already
So,
did it.
Yeah, I didn't inform you, we put it on there, sorry.
Okay.
We'll sign the put it on the,
Okay,
Huh.
So that's, so is it
It'll
80
be-
or 80?
do you want it to be 58 or do you want it to be 81?
81,
81.
Gotcha, okay, so that was. Okay,
Okay, so you moved, basically the
so we have
voucher.
voucher 81
Yeah.
for the fire department, $578,000 flat.
Second that. Any discussion? Okay, vote?
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
yes, I guess that was my name.
Yes.
Woodworth,
yes,
Gagnon.
Yes. Really? All right, I move we appoint Peter McDonald to the Danby Water Committee.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? And vote?
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
yes,
Woodworth,
yes,
and Gagnon.
Yes.
and whose spot is Peter taking? Carl?
Carl.
Carl's, okay,
Yeah. Carl stayed on,
Right.
and said, you know, when he found somebody to replace him, he would
Right.
step down.
okay.
Which he did, effective February 1st.
We need to give Carl a little plaque or something, how long? has he
Yeah,
been
we're
on
trying to
there?
figure out how to,
Oh.
and he doesn't really want a big party, but, you know, we kind of like to honor
Oh,
him.
the cookies?
Well, in fact, that's in fact what we're doing is working up a platform.
Yeah. Okay,
We raised the whole question of can we do a plaque and pay for it with town money?
I have a frame. I mean, we can
Yeah,
put something
I mean,
together.
the committee was saying, well, if we can't, we'll just share the cost. But,
Yeah. We can all,
but I
Sure.
probably should check, you know, New York State's money that way.
We got all the stuff that we did together.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, if you have a party, you can't give away the food, but, you know, a recognition plaque isn't quite the same thing.
well, we did that with Rick's tree and stuff. People just paid for it.
Yeah, right.
We didn't charge it to the town.
Right.
Yeah. Feel like we ought to be able to, though.
Okay.
Where are we with respect to the, workplace violence threat assessment team?
We talked about it a few different times and we have asked for possibly to add somebody from the highway crew. And we're in the process of checking in with an individual for that. And I've also asked David McDermott if he had another suggestion from library.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so hopefully we can find some people before the next meeting.
Okay,
I'll get on it.
Okay, so I'll put it on for next time then.
Well, I think, did you mean the next meeting or did you mean the next meeting, the workplace violence committee?
No, I meant the
Next, our next meeting, because we have to,
Okay.
yeah,
That's what I was
if
thinking.
we want to adjust both the charge and the membership, we should do it here.
Is that okay?
Yeah. We, having investigated whether or not we can do it or not, it has become clear that there can be co-chairs of the CAC. So having investigated whether it can be done, it is now clear that there can be co-chairs for the CAC. And given the desire of the CAC that there be co-chairs, I move that we appoint Jonathan Siska as co-chair.
Second,
Any discussion about that?
I think it's really important and I'm glad that they're both willing to do this.
Me too. Chance to vote?
Connors,
I'm gonna abstain.
Hunter,
Yes,
Woodworth,
yes,
Yes. Right. Which brings us to the recently, well, we got the CDBG block grant for housing rehab, and we hired Toma out of Cortland to administer it for us. And now there are a couple of decisions made about what kind of participation the board wants in the process of approvals. And I didn't want to make an executive decision about this, but we should talk about it as a board and decide, what level of review you want. So there are a couple of decisions that need to be made. One had to do with what level of financial approval or review the board wants to participate in. It could be just the selection of which projects, which ones get chosen to get dealt with. And then the subsequent, awarding of, choice of contractors and how much they are and so forth would be dealt with, by David basically and me. Or if you want to be more involved, you could be involved at the level of the individual payments. Making sure that the as we do for all the other reviews, that the contracted amounts are reasonable, that would then, when we get vouchers, that they are correspond to what was agreed to be spent and the usual review. So it's the board's choice really, at what level you want to be at, whether at the project level or at the individual, essentially the voucher level. And we're talking 10 to 15 altogether. If we might be able to fund.
Have we gotten any applications?
Well, we're not quite there yet. Maybe we're poised. You want to speak to that, David?
Yeah, so we today actually got clearance from the state that we can start advertising. So nothing has started yet. The choice that Joel is describing before the board, as he said, we could be renovating 10 to 15 homes. The usual standard and I'd say most expeditious way to run that is that once Toma has some applications, they bring them to the board and the board approves the project and a rough budget. And then the board is done. What they offered as another option was that, for each of those projects, there will be multiple bills over the duration of the project. They will have to provide all of those to the town. It's not getting paid with town funds. What happens is a bill is generated, it comes to me managing the program. It has to be signed off on by several people. We send it to New York State. They process it. They send the town a check, and then the town has to, within 5 days, turn that check around to the homeowner and the contractor. So it's state money that comes in and then immediately leaves the town's coffers. And again, that will happen several times for each of the 10 to 15 projects. So the general recommendation is that the town board not review each and every one of those bills, but rather approve the project as a whole. But if you wanted to approve each of those bills, just be prepared that it's could be 90 bills easily that you'd have to look over. And that you meet twice a month, so it wouldn't slow things down too much, but it definitely would slow down that process.
The reason it's feasible at all is because there's a gap between the time the request for payment is sent to Albany and the time they take their own sweet time about getting back to you saying, yes, you can do this. Once they say yes, you only have 5 days to do it. So in that period while we're waiting for them to say, okay, the board could say, okay, if the board wants to be involved at that level. So there's time for us to while it's being authorized by Albany to go ahead and say, yep, okay. But it's not necessary. It's just a question of whether you want to be involved at that level or not.
As long as it's state money
Yeah,
and
it
the
is.
state has to approve it, I'm fine with the state approving it and not following up again a second time. I would be willing to be interested in at the project level
Mhm.
only.
I don't know that I feel qualified to say who is doing which part of that kind of project. I think it would be interesting from my perspective, for us to see it, but when it's gone through so much to get to this point, it seems that it would be disingenuous for me to say, I don't think you should do this, or I think you should, or I think you should use that contractor, or not this, or that doorknob, or not this one, or that heat system.
Mhm.
That's sort of my basic response to this. Maybe it's not a good response, but it's my momentary response.
Yeah, we would not be involved in the selection so much as would be in the just review to make sure that, it's another set of eyes to look at, was this contract executed according to the specifications? And, this is a legitimate bill.
Yeah.
And
That would be all right.
But
But
it
it's
kind of
not.
assumes that the state isn't doing their job properly. And if it's state
Well,
funding, they should be responsible in doing their job. And David would have the backup as well.
yeah, that's right. I mean, it's not like David's not gonna look at it and I'm not gonna look at it, but, so I mean, it sounds like you're okay at the project level.
Yeah.
Laura has a comment.
Okay. What? Oh, Laura.
Just a real quick comment on that too. Both David and I will both have our eyes on that because I'll be cutting all the checks, sweeping the money out of the accounts, cutting the checks. We'll be knowing the budgets for each project. David will be looking at all the contracts and making sure that that's all going right. And then the financials will go this way too. And we'll end up in the end combining our files together in what they call the box, right? So just to let you know, the 2 staff members are looking at the money as well. If that makes you feel,
Good.
Cool. Sounds good.
Okay. Now, the next question, which is a little bit thornier, is the question of who is eligible to participate. And what kind of applications are acceptable? There's already a provision in the framework for this CBDG grant that manufactured housing doesn't qualify. Although, and I pressed them on this question, Toma, there can be circumstances where I said, what about, because we in Danby allow double wides on permanent foundations,
Yeah.
how is that different than any other house? And it said, well, you know, in a case like that, where you can make a case for it being a sort of a permanent installation, maybe they can get somebody in that situation covered if they need to be. What they like to do with manufactured houses is replace them rather than repair them. But that's, you know, a budget buster if you try to do that. So what's not what we're about fixing up. And to me, it doesn't make any sense to exclude, you know, the ones that are permanently installed. And maybe we can include them. But the other question, two other questions which are particularly relevant is some people are in a situation where the occupant of the dwelling, which is the one who needs the help, doesn't actually own the building. They've got life use of it, where they sold it to their kids, you know, and they get to stay there until they die. So the actual owner isn't the person actually living there. But we can allow them to be qualified to participate if we wish, as opposed to having the actual owner be the one who's applying, because they're not, you know, totally different criteria as far as participation. You know, the person who's living there might be low income and in need, but they don't actually own the building. But they're not renting, they just have life use. So that's one class of people that do we or don't we? Why do we allow them to participate?
I can't believe there's a huge number of them, and it makes perfectly good sense. Makes perfectly good sense for them to allow it. If somebody wants to set up an account where they don't have to worry about giving the property when they die, going through probate, it's a lot easier to do it that way. But that shouldn't keep them away from keeping their house up.
I'm inclined to agree with that. You too? What do you think?
I mean, so we're talking about potentially having work done on a building that the owner is not saying, yes, I want the work done on the building.
Well, obviously the owner has to go along, but we're basing the eligibility not on the owner, but on the person who actually lives there and has
Okay,
life
so
and has a
in
life.
that situation, you would also get permission from the owner. The eligibility is based on the person living in the house
Yes.
versus
And the complication is, and maybe
No,
Steve could speak to this, because the way this program works, it's actually it's a loan and not a gift.
right,
It's a loan that gets forgiven if you stay in the house for 10 years.
right.
But there's also provision, if you pass away, then you know that it gets forgiven also. But if for some reason you sell the place and move someplace else, unless you're moving to assisted living or a nursing home,
Right.
You have to pay it back in proportion to the time that you would, you know, of the 10 years that you were not there. David, do you know how it would work with a life use agreement?
I think that is the reason it's somewhat dicey is I think that's a population that you're more likely to come upon the question of death. And it's harder to, it's a little bit harder to justify because you're having the benefit clearly go to someone else who's going to make a profit on it. And I think that's why some places limit it. It also requires you to make a more complicated agreement with the owner and the person who has the life use rights. Essentially, the town ends up with, holding a piece of the deed for these properties for that it's basically like a mortgage that the town holds on the property because of the clawback provisions. So it just makes another party that we have to engage in that process. And Toma said they're fine with it either way, but it is confusing enough that they like towns to tell them what we prefer.
So I'm hearing Pat and Catherine both in support of having it be admissible to have life use agreement.
It sounds really complicated, but I think it is because as long as we are able to make sure that somebody doesn't just say, well, my parents can't afford to do this, but I mean, my parents can afford it. They own the house. I live in the house and I can't afford it. So I'm applying for something to be done to the house that my parents own and they could fix it up. I mean, I don't know how I don't know what to think about
I
that.
mean, there'd be some process for checking with the owner about this before any work was done anyway, right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
We need permission from the owner as well as the occupant, right,
That's
David?
what David just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only permission, they have to agree that we have a lien against the property essentially.
Mhm.
That's significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I can't imagine that there are too many
I
people
can't either,
in
but
this
you never,
situation.
this is
Right.
sort of hidden in the woodwork, you know, who knows?
They might come out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're looking at the population of people that we're trying to help.
Right,
And, if they haven't fixed it up, it's chances are because not only do they not have the money, but neither do
Right,
the kids who actually own it.
right. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so that sounds like yes for that one. And the other one is land contract. If you're familiar with the land contract, as opposed to a mortgage, when somebody buys a house, in the usual situation with a mortgage is, basically you have title, even though basically the bank's got a lien against it for the mortgage amount, but you've got title, so you own it on paper. With a land contract, the title remains with the person who's selling it to you
Right,
until you pay it off in installments. It's basically an installment purchase thing. So that means that the resident is not the actual owner of the building. So again, they bought the place, they're paying it off in installments, and it's a terrible arrangement, by the way, because if you miss a payment, it's still theirs, and
yeah,
you forfeit everything you paid. Yeah. But there are people who buy on land contracts, and some of them might end up being people in need of help because they could barely afford to make their payments in the first place, so they've got some major need for repairs and they haven't got the money to pay for it. So again, do we want to allow people who are in a land contract arrangement as opposed to with a mortgage or otherwise own the place to participate?
David, what is Toma's opinion on that?
Trying to remember what they said, and I'm not having the best luck. I think that the concern here is that there's even more risk of a difficult time getting money back in the instance where someone leaves the house. Say someone has a land contract and they leave after 3 years. How do we then collect? We have a lien on the property, and it has to be signed off on by the person who owns the property. But it doesn't, unlike someone selling a house, there isn't a sale happening, so that there isn't a bunch of cash being generated. There's just the control reverting back to the seller who never completed the sale. So I think it's a bit more risky in terms of our job of kind of protecting this state money, and it's actually federal money flowing through the state. I think there's some worry about possibility of not being able to comply with the requirements of getting it back. I think that's why it's a question.
I wouldn't be on the agenda except that Thomas said we need to know how you feel about this, because it could be done either way.
yeah. Well, I think that sounds a little more risky.
Yeah, that sounds a
I'd
lot
be
more
inclined to
risky than
say
the other
no.
option.
I'd be inclined to say no.
I'm not sure I'm seeing a whole lot difference in the risk because
No, there is a big difference in the risk.
How so?
It could be.
Because if they leave, he went through the example. If they leave in 3 years, you can't get the money back.
Well, I mean,
If somebody dies, you can. That's different.
how would you get the money back if you, in the case of a life use agreement? Because the ownership is in the hands of the,
He already went through that example. He went through the details.
well, I'm not seeing it, okay? So if you could explain to me the difference.
Ask David.
Okay, David, what's the difference?
I
Between
think
a life use, where
one,
the
yeah.
ownership is in the children's hands, say, and after 3 years, the person who resides ends up in a nursing home, say. The ownership hasn't changed. There's no sale precipitated by their departure necessarily. Kids might move into the house. How are we in any better or worse situation there than we would be with a land contract where the ownership simply reverts to the, well, it doesn't revert, it has stayed with the same person all along.
right. I think one of the differences is that, well, let me tell you where there would not be a difference. There would not be a difference if the person who had life use of the property just decided to move somewhere else. Then you'd be in the same situation either way. If the person who had life use of the property died or went into a nursing home, that's already forgiven. It's one of the exemptions in the, from
Yeah.
the payback. So really where they're similar is if someone just decided, you know, they wanted to move to Florida or whatever, moved out of the house, then you'd be in the same situation. There isn't necessarily a sale. You do have a mortgage on the property, and there, you know, you can collect. It's probably won't be easy, but that's kind of the risk that comes with being involved in that kind of service.
But where does the difference lie, if any? Because I could see where they're similar. I don't see where they're different in terms of risk.
I think in terms of a life use agreement, it's much more likely that you end up with that nursing home or death being the outcome, as opposed to a land contract, which could be someone of
Young person.
be someone of any age, more likely to move for other reasons.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You know, if people in a land contract are apt to be younger,
Yeah.
buying the property as
There's
opposed
no
to.
there's no guarantee that a life use person is older. I mean, I have a disabled aunt who has a life use of the house, and her mom owns the house because she's not able to care for herself. So there's other ways that can happen, but
It's usually some health issues, usually, as opposed to just trying to buy something.
right.
Or as you pointed out, Pat, you know, with the life use, sometimes it's toward the end of life, in order to ease the transition to the heirs.
Yep.
Mhm.
Is this a grant that's one time? Is it possible that it will be available in 2 years?
Well, we can reapply, and maybe, I don't know, Dave, what do you think the chances are getting?
I'm just
additional-
wondering if we run into, you know, if we say no to land contract and we find out there are situations where it would have been nice to, is there a chance down the road for another grant process to include those people?
Mhm.
Definitely. So we can apply for this program every year. Each funding that we get is for 2 years, but you don't have to wait 2 years to get the next one. So you can get it every year, and each funding that you get you have to spend it within 2 years.
I don't know what the probability is of getting follow-on grants. I mean, it's competitive, but
It really comes down to the waiting list that we establish. So if we have, you know, dozens and dozens of applicants, we'll turn that into a waiting list for the next go around.
you know, since this is the first time, and since I would think we would want to help the ones who need to help the worst or the most. My inclination is to be as inclusive as possible in terms of eligibility to apply. the choice of who to approve is ours. So there'll be, you know, a number of applicants. There's a criteria for ranking them. Which type criteria take into account, you know, some very obvious things like, you know, income is a big one. As well as, you know, how deteriorated it is, how great the need is, if it was a health or safety issue. And you get points for being a veteran, you get points for being was it frail and elderly is the phrase. That give you a better chance. So it's not totally subjective. But then, you know, given that you've got a limited number, there may be people come out similarly ranked, and you have to decide, you know, this one versus this one. And, you know, it'll be a judgment call as to who to allow. And say, well, maybe next time, but then, you know, maybe not.
Well, it sounds like waiting lists would be. obviously
Well, yeah, no
something
doubt.
that-
Yeah.
I'm inclined to say no for the land contract this time around.
I'm inclined to say no as well.
What do you think?
It would be interesting to see if we had any idea at all how
Yeah.
many people are even applying or might, and
Yeah.
you know.
We have no idea how many people
No
are going to be in this
idea,
cat. I mean, we might not have anybody with a land contract.
Right.
We might not have anybody with a life use agreement either.
Right.
We don't know.
Right,
Right.
right. But
And
after this first go around, we will have an idea, maybe.
Yeah, we'll have a better idea for sure. Yeah. Land contracts used to be
Yeah.
fairly common.
Right.
I don't think they're as common anymore, but I can't say for sure that that's the case. Because it's such a crummy deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you know,
What do you want? Well, I mean, I'm okay either way on this. Land contract and big. And the thing is, the people have to apply and be eligible, period. I mean, there's a lot of other, it sounds like there's many hoops to be jumped through. So what I meant when I said how many people might be interested, I didn't mean how many land contract or line, what I meant, how many people, period, might be even interested in the program at all.
well, we do have preliminary indications of interest, right, David?
That's why we got the grant, because he had to do that survey
Right,
first.
exactly. So we had some idea.
Preliminary interest.
Right,
Not-
exactly.
That doesn't mean that they're,
Yeah.
what they do, that they're gonna do it.
Right. Although part of this, one of the advantages of having chosen Toma is that they'll basically help you out to do the application.
Yeah.
Particularly when, you know, the part of the target population is elderly people, some of whom may be, you know, you say, I can't deal with this, you know. They'll say, start to fill out the application. If you need help, we'll help you, you know, finish it. It make it as easy as possible for people who need it, help to get it. And that's what Tom is good at.
Well, I guess the problem that I'm having is that it might be that those people are the ones that are most in need because they made such a bad idea when they bought the place or did it.
Yeah.
And that would be, and then if we just said no because you made a bad decision about how you buy the house or the whatever, that doesn't seem right either. I mean, if we're going for the people who are most in need, they might be it.
They might, because, you know, it's oftentimes the lowest income people who end up in these land contract arrangements.
And since the town and the,
Because they can't get a regular mortgage.
the risk may not be as bad as, there are a lot of parameters around it. If you're talking about Laura's looking at it, David's looking at it, the state's looking at it.
That's not approving it. That's after the fact. And
That's after the
they
fact,
can't
yeah.
control certain things. That's just approving that the things are spent where they're supposed to.
I
It's not-
understand, but I said there's a lot of people looking at
Not, they're not looking at that part.
it. Okay,
Beginner.
fine.
Mhm.
I can abstain and you also vote, that's fine.
No, I mean, your opinion's valuable.
Yeah, yeah. Too bad Steve's not here.
Just one additional thing to consider, if we do allow land contracts, we may come back with more questions about what needs to be in them, because it's a much more flexible thing than a than a typical deed. So, what provisions have to be in the land contract to qualify, or does any land contract whatsoever qualify? I mean, there's people who say they have a long land contract who never recorded it with the county, or may not even have it in writing, or there's more stuff there, and we could cross that bridge when we get to it. But just to be aware, land contract isn't as specific of a thing when you get down to it, and somebody signed a piece of paper that said, I promise to, give this land to somebody after they make this many payments. That might be all that there is to it.
But in that case, it would simply be, we can't do it because we can't prove who owns it, or can't prove.
That's what his statement was. It's a lot more complicated, and
Okay,
saying we approve these isn't enough, because it brings up more questions.
It's a question of,
Questions are not terrible, sorry.
Yeah.
But that means we shouldn't approve this without having the other questions dealt with.
well,
We
no,
say we approve land contracts, then we didn't, we say we.
No,
we-
it doesn't mean
We
that.
approve land contracts, period, as opposed to with restrictions.
Okay, I clearly don't understand all of this. However, I think I heard that they would have to have a paper that really actually showed that there was for real. That's what I thought I heard. As I say,
That's not what he said.
I don't know enough. Okay.
no, I mean, David makes a good point, we could say we're willing to entertain the possibility of land contracts, but then we need further criteria to indicate, it needs to be something solid that we can point to.
Right, that's what I thought I heard.
Which means we shouldn't approve it now. We should say, bring back the details first. We shouldn't approve it without those details first.
I don't think this is a done and forever question. I think that you could change your mind later.
Mhm.
If it seems like a bunch of people have these and we want to readdress it, I don't think there's any problem with you making that choice down the line.
Something we could add if we saw the need was there.
And we'd have
Yeah.
more details, and that would make it safer for the state money, which is a good idea.
Yeah, we could, I mean, we have no idea, we not have anybody, applying with it
Right.
in this situation. It was just a question of saying, sorry, you don't have you don't own the property, and so you can't participate. Or maybe you can, what's the nature of your contract? It's the same thing as the life use, maybe you can.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be messy too.
Yeah, right. Which is why they settled, this is because these situations can be messy,
Right.
that they flagged them as something that they want the board to be thinking about upfront before we get into it.
Right.
So that you say, that they've gotten themselves in an awkward position in trying to administer the program on our behalf, or others' behalf. When these kinds of situations have come up and it's not clear whether or not people are eligible to participate or not. So we want to be clear up front when we're setting it up, if whether or not somebody in the life use agreement or somebody who's got a land contract instead of title to their property can participate. These are two classes of people who don't really have title to the property.
We already decided one, so now we have to decide the other.
Yeah, right. So we said yes for one. And we're saying maybe yes for the other, but let's think about what the conditions would need to be.
I would say just leave it open and bring it back again for a discussion if there is one, if there's need for it.
So you're
That's
saying,
not, I would not want to say prove it now.
what you're saying is that, if people are going to be able to apply, we basically have to say, it's a possibility, which is kind of a qualified yes. Otherwise, you're saying, if somebody is in that situation, don't even apply because we're not going to be willing to consider it. So you almost have to do a conditional yes in order to see whether there's people out there who are in need and under this, in this circumstance.
Right.
And then we can, and then if you have people, somebody saying, well, can I apply? And they, well, they say, well, then the follow on is, well, what's the nature of your contract? But it'd be good to clarify that before you even got to that point. I think that's your point, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, well, do you know what kind of qualifiers there might be, David, that would ought to be brought into consideration?
Yeah, I was just looking at a CARES Act CDBG program in Ohio, and they allowed land contracts, did require that the land contract needed to be in writing, did not require that the land contract had been filed with the county clerk. So those are two things. Does it have to be in writing? Does it have to be filed? You could also, require that there be specific components to it, like that the purchaser, it doesn't lose the house the day they miss one payment, that they have some more flexibility or something like that. Because the way those contracts are written, they could be that draconian, or there could be more options. And then you get into the same question that you've been thinking about of, do we want to not approve someone who's in the most precarious position? The reason that you might not want to approve them is because it's very likely that the house ends up back in the hands of the seller with all the work that we paid for with government money.
And when the seller doesn't need that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think
Which
we
they may or
should,
may not.
if the idea is to get some more of those details and get a list of those, we should look at those first before we decide. And then we can do that at the next meeting.
Okay, except that, didn't I hear that if you do it and they sell it and they do something before those 10 years, the money all has to come back to pay it back?
Not the owner.
Well,
The owner didn't get the grant.
it's a lien against the property.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the
the
question is
the
whether you can get it.
property-
He just said there's a question of whether you can actually get it.
Well, yeah, it's a lien against the property, so it stays with the property. They're not going to sell the property without clearing that lien.
Right, so the money is blocked. And for all we know, the owner is the one that's really strapped also. I mean,
It could be, because that's oftentimes how you end up in these situations.
right,
In which case the owner can apply for it and there's not an issue.
no, they don't, I thought you had, isn't there a requirement that they have to be living in it?
That's a good question. Do you know the answer, David?
They do have to be living in it. Yeah.
The applicant has to be living in it.
Yeah. And the applicant
It's
generally,
intended to be for owner occupied. This is sort of a
Right.
gray area. Of owner
Well, I mean,
occupied.
I mean, either we just say no and change our minds later if we get more information about the number of people and the situations, or we have to be specific about, yeah, we'll consider folks that have a land contract, but it has to be in writing, it has to be filed with the county clerk, and I don't know what other stipulations there are, but I feel like we need to do.
Yeah, I don't know
We want the
whether,
details first, and we can get them by the next meeting. I don't know why we couldn't
Yeah.
get them by the next
Right.
meeting.
and I don't know whether in New York State there's a requirement that land contracts be filed with the county clerk.
No, but it may not be, I don't.
That doesn't mean
it
we
may
can't
not be a
require it.
requirement, but
Yeah,
for us, it might be a requirement to be able to get the.
yes,
federal
yes,
money.
yes, right.
So,
But I mean, it would be easy for somebody to meet if there's already a requirement that you do it, that it be filed. It's like having a mortgage, it gets attached to the deed, so that.
I'd be inclined to say no unless we, and then to revisit it if we run into enough situations, or even one situation, where, exception seems to be
Mhm.
in order.
You mean within the contracted year?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all right with that.
I mean, it sounds like we can change our mind.
We can
Yes.
change our mind.
But
But however, how would
if we
we,
don't have enough information to say that this is an
Exactly.
issue, that we
Exactly.
have, all these people, with the manufactured housing, the life use agreement, we don't have really any idea how many people in Danby are in those situations.
right.
So
So the only question is
we'll
whether or
find
not we'll find out.
we'll find out.
If they apply and they don't qualify, then David, I assume Toma can keep track of those that apply and don't qualify for this reason. So yes, we would know, yes.
Yeah. But of course, they're not going to apply if we tell them ahead of time that you can't apply
And where would you tell them that?
in the town news, where you tell you how, here are the criteria for participating in this program.
It's already been in the town news out now, whatever. he
Not
wrote
in the
last
town
time.
news, no, in the program, an application program itself. We didn't publish an application. The
Okay.
application itself.
Oh.
What, David?
I was agreeing with you. Yes, we didn't publish an application yet.
Great.
Will the application make it clear who's eligible?
It will, but it doesn't necessarily have to address this, and we can deal with that when people come in.
Yeah, that would make
Okay.
more sense. That allows it more flexibility and we don't take the risk up front
It gives us information too.
and gives
Yeah.
us information, exactly.
Yeah, as long as we could, have the ambiguity sort of built in, as opposed to making it clear up front. It has to be owner occupied, you have to own the property, which, would cut out these two possibilities. If it just said, if you're living in the house and you have the need and you're not renting, go ahead and apply. Because it doesn't apply to rentals, obviously. And we could not mention that it doesn't apply to manufactured
Right.
housing too, because
Right.
it's right in there, it's not qualified.
Yeah.
Right, so we're sort of saying no, right? Unless we decide to change our mind.
Great.
Yeah. Which is going to be based on whether or not we have a bunch of people in that situation
Right.
applying. Yeah,
Right.
we might not get anybody. Okay.
Well, hopefully, it'll be interesting information,
Well, yeah, for sure.
to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of those.
Yes.
And we won't, I've got right at the moment, I've got no way of knowing. The cybersecurity insurance. Cybersecurity.
Okay, sorry. I can't make this work, and then have to ask you what you said, sorry. Okay, so every time I learn a little bit more, it's a little more disturbing, this IT security and cybersecurity bit. So today I did call NYMER and I had an opening conversation, only an opening conversation. But one of the interesting things I did learn is that and I'm going to use rough figures, please don't hold me to things. There's a little over 900,000 municipalities that have NYMER insurance. Only about 500,000 of them have cyber insurance. We are one of them. As the days go by, it's not safe to say the years, as the days go by and more people are alarmed by what's been happening, and Suffolk County, for instance, was shut down for 2 solid months.
What was shut down?
Suffolk County completely, because of
Right.
because there was some software that was being used in the town that caused the problem, and it was Black Cat, I believe. I looked it up on the internet too, but I'm just going on a little bit of memory that got in, and it just kind of says a little way here, through and there, and it's not seen. So another person from NYMER is going to call me back and tell me more about exactly what our policy is, which will be helpful.
So we've got insurance, but we're not sure how good it is.
Right. And the other thing that we did learn with one of the interviews is that if anything does happen, we have to call the insurance company first, not the IT company.
Mhm.
and tell them so that they know, so that we are not negligent in informing them, because as the guy from Nymer said, and the same thing with any insurance company, if there's any way for anybody to wiggle out of making a payment, they will. So our responsibility is to call the insurance company first, right away. And then they can look for the crumbs to try
And they
and
can
track
shut-
what happened.
all the IT down for a couple days
While they check it out.
while they check it out.
Yeah,
There's that risk too. So it's much better to prevent than deal with these things to the extent that you can. So that's part of what we're about, is figuring out how to arm ourselves against the, reduce the probability of there being a problem. Because it's a whole lot easier to prevent than it is to deal with.
right.
So-
And as I believe, again, sticking my neck out from the things I've learned, that we really do have to investigate how we can work how we do interconnect with the town programs from our homes,
Yeah,
Mhm.
because that became quite clear that that's not good. Now, on the other side, we are a very low target. We're very small. And that's, but you just can't count on it. It's just like anybody who says, well, that never happened before.
yeah.
Might as well say, here we are. So I'll still find out more, but that was the latest of interest to me, is finding out more about our own insurance.
Yeah.
And Laura's been, she's been on top of that insurance company, so that's been
Yeah.
helpful.
On the not so great side, I was reading recently that as this becomes more and more of an issue, the larger places with the bigger budgets are better and better fortified against it, and the hackers are going after the low hanging fruit, which is the smaller municipalities that are unprepared and more vulnerable.
Well, when I was reading about Suffolk County, they have a huge IT staff,
Yeah, it
and
doesn't
they
keep
have,
it doesn't mean it can't happen.
and it did happen to them.
Yeah.
It happened because, and it made it because they had lots of people's fingers in it, and then all it takes is this one program that somebody likes to use that makes it more vulnerable.
Mhm.
So, there was something else, though. You made me think of it. What was it? I can't remember.
Low
Sorry.
hanging fruit.
Yeah, it was before that. Yeah, whenever I hear those terms, I think of that incredible song, Strange Fruit. So
Oh, yeah.
it sends me, sorry. It's a terrible song, and
Yeah.
so,
Oh.
yeah.
Cool.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
They're probably, so I called, oh yes, and I also called Caitlin. I left a message with Caitlin
yeah,
also
Olson
from
is the-
Trumansburg, because they've been going through this. They put that RFP out that Joel may have told, I guess you told the town. I don't know who you told, but I knew about it. So
I've seen it. Yeah. Yeah.
they put an RFP out, and that didn't even get them what they wanted. So now they hired a company,
Mhm.
a little more than I.
Well, I guess what Caitlin told me was they hired this company as a result of the RFP process to come in and evaluate what they've got and recommend what they need. So basically, they're because none of them feel competent to make that judgment. So they're basically hiring the company to do the evaluation and not to be the provider,
Right.
but to recommend, what needs to be covered so that they can actually source it
Right.
from somebody else.
Yes, come in and evaluate, and then set up the questions and the things, so that when, for instance, we would then go to people, we'd have all the right questions. We could ask each company the same question,
Yeah.
Mhm.
so it's pretty complicated.
So Kathy, I mean, you mentioned, I think, in a conversation with me, the possibility of maybe collaborating with,
I was asking,
Did
and
you-
I did ask, I left that on the message.
but she hasn't responded yet.
And I don't know whether it's appropriate or not, but what's the harm of asking?
No harm in asking.
Yeah.
Because I mean, as I've approached this issue, it would be nice if this were dealt with collaboratively. We're not the only ones in this position. And it seems like a sort of ripe for being dealt with at a county level rather than
Right, I
each-
really
each
think,
town.
yeah.
So but the trouble is our need is now. So, and it takes time to deal with it at the county level, but that is being pursued at the same time, and maybe we take advantage of it.
Right.
Okay. Next items for next meeting agenda. One of the things I want to bring up is the capital planning. So at the staff meeting on Wednesday, we brought up the list, which was last year with the board in September of capital projects, and added a couple items to the list. I'll send that out to everybody, and Janice has it updated, so that we can have a discussion about what do we think are most important to pursue, and get more information about, because it quickly comes to light that there's a bunch of overall decisions that need to get made, that as part of the process that will determine, what gets pursued when, and how. But when we've got identified needs, first of all, you need to identify the need, and then if we come up with a plan for how to deal with it, it puts us in a much better position to chase money to do things. If you say, we say, this is what we want to do. Here's where we want to do it. Here's what we're doing in order to position ourselves to do it. And then say, but we need money for this, this, and this. And when the opportunity comes up, you say, let's go for that.
Well, I'd like, if we can put a couple of things on that list, I would like to see broadband for the town be a big part of it, whatever money we chase.
yeah.
The broadband
is
is,
on there.
and it's gotta be way up there.
Yeah, because
And
the
the other
broadband is
thing-
on there, and the question is whether it will be how. to get
Right.
broadband.
Well, that should be right up there. And the other one that I'm painfully aware of right now is the problem that I sent out to to you about there's no place for the youth anymore.
Right.
And even the park is not, the bus driver.
Yeah.
The bus driver won't stop without a crosswalk and let the kids walk across the road to use the park. And that was, they were planning to do a,
I was thinking about this the other night. Why didn't turn around in the church parking lot?
in the church parking lot. I don't know whether that's well, that's because they're on a route. So you're suggesting go down, turn around, go up here, and then.
Well, even
drop
if
those
you drop them off at the church, it wouldn't be very far.
Yes, school bus.
Well, don't they have to drop children off along the highway?
Yeah, and they do cross the street.
They won't, the bus driver won't do it anymore. Won't wait. And there's
What do
no
they do
bus.
if somebody's dropping off?
My guess is that the difference is if you're dropping one
group.
child off to a parent who's standing by the road to, instead of like 10 people's kids,
Yeah.
parents,
All right,
or kids who are there, and there's no crosswalk. So Dan said he's never seen a county road with a crosswalk. I mean, a state road.
Yeah.
We talked about this in the core, and when we were discussing how to slow people down in the core in the zoning.
Yeah, and it's in the list of the priorities.
Yeah,
is the
crosswalk.
crosswalk.
Yeah,
Are there crosswalks in the city on 13? Meadow Street?
well,
well, they're gonna.
not
put it-
really.
No.
There's some on Old Spencer Road. There's
Not on
at least
13.
one or two.
No, on 13? I mean, they're
Not-
crossing lights at the lights.
Yeah,
the walk lights.
yeah.
and stuff.
You take your own life in your
Well,
hands.
true, but I mean, they do have
There's
walk.
no
there
street-
aren't
there's no
any.
street light here.
There aren't any. There's
No,
Old Spencer
that's
Road
true.
has got two, I think, but not
Yeah.
really changed.
But wouldn't the crosswalks would be in lieu of, wouldn't they?
No.
A walk light at an intersection? No?
Anyway, what I was gonna get to is in our capital planning was, again, to mention the community center
Yeah,
with the
that's on.
problem.
Yes,
Right, we
Yeah.
didn't have a place for any community group bigger than this,
right.
or the fire department, which is not.
Oh, there's a church too.
What?
There's a church too.
So the church, the kids can't go there.
They can't
Nope, not anymore.
because they don't want them to, or?
I don't know.
Mhm.
All I know is that that's not available to them anymore.
Yeah.
Even for production. Now, they're using the room for something else, but,
Huh.
I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised.
well,
Yeah,
we
'Cause
all are.
Yeah, because.
But we're the only one, and I was talking to Steve briefly, because he answered the phone when I thought he was talking to somebody else, but anyway, he mentioned also, we're the only town that doesn't have a community gathering center place.
Yeah,
So broadband and
a community
what
center.
the whole town needs
Yeah.
versus things that might look nice but aren't,
Yep.
aren't as big a deal.
yeah.
So,
I mean, we had, like I said, we talked about this a little bit at the staff meeting, and we were talking about, there's this lot next door here. That's where the house is,
Yeah.
that we might want to acquire, but, that plus the space that we've already got here would be space to do something.
right,
But then there's the, if you do a community center, the park is across the street, you have that whole across the street issue. If we wanted to do anything by way of, daycare or after school, it'd be nice if it had joined the park. And the park was acquired
Yeah.
specifically for a community
Yeah.
center. We ended up with a park instead of a community center, but there's provision in the 10 acres that's closest to the highway was left out of the park land so that community center could be built there. And, well, we need to have a discussion with the park
right,
board
with the park.
about what are they willing to do? Is it still feasible? We could spend some of our money looking, on an engineering study if it was an issue of whether or not it can be done there or not. To buttress it. And as part of the planning process, last year, David and I approached them and spoke to the question of what about doing something that would lead up to it, like create a public restroom facility, maybe with a pavilion attached so that you could have events.
Right.
And then maybe
Right.
on, we can expand on that, and then create more of a building with enclosed rooms or something. But there's a well there, the water could be developed to provide water for facility.
Those are all good things. And just to be clear, it's not having this other ideas for the kids, but they're not permanent and they're not good ones. They're not the idea of going down, turning around the church and coming back up. That means then the bus has to go somewhere up there and turn around to go do the rest of the delivery of kids home. And the other thing is if they wait until the end of the route and if the bus were able to come back, then they'd be way, way late for their program. So,
Sure.
and that as far as turning around, if there were a facility built in the park, it would have proper parking or proper place for a bus to turn around,
Mhm.
Well,
because that would be part of it. What?
That's not usually part of a building.
If we're building a public bathroom and a pavilion for people to meet, I think that the parking area could have, that's something that could be included in it, so.
Yeah, I mean, the bus could simply drop the kids off at the church. It's not that, I mean, it joins the park, the back, you can walk across. But,
I don't know whether, I will ask that. I will ask that question, because that might be a temporary solution for them, because they could walk through that pathway. I'll ask, Heidi, and I'll check on that.
yeah, is it,
But meanwhile, the big time issue is that we don't have a community place.
right? We should approach the state too about the crosswalk question,
What was
the DOT, I mean, like,
yeah,
a legitimate thing about, trying to develop any kind of a hamlet.
yeah,
center
instead of
here.
having me go
Getting
out in the
across
middle
the
of the night,
road is an issue.
instead of having me go out in the middle of the night with some reflective white paint.
Yes,
Oh, brother. You could have the kids have a project of designing crosswalks as part of their programs, and look at all those cool ones in Holland.
They say, we'll paint,
Anyway, that's
we'll paint it on for you if you just let us do it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
If in the capital project, I think that
Yeah.
broadband is really important.
It is.
Especially when we hear that people say that they can't come to meetings because they don't have it, or they can't learn because they don't have it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Do you guys like the highway department to look into this crosswalk situation with the contacts we have? Through the state and through, get all the particulars about it?
If you got leads on it,
Okay.
Laura, that'd be great.
Yeah, if they can ask the state.
That, make the phone calls, try to figure out, all the particulars.
I know that Keith, I put them on that email, and they've been trying to be creative with ideas, but I think a call to state would be really helpful,
Yeah.
really helpful, yeah.
Bring it up again.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Other items for the agenda next time? Okay, we'll see what comes up, if something else
Yeah.
does. All right, well then, thank you for coming. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you for the help.